From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Gulf Coast Studios in New Orleans, this is the Overtime Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Fazende, riding shotgun as he does each and every podcast. Is Andre Johnson.
Junior.
Do not forget the Junior. Very important. Remember the JR at the end of the name. Before we get into today's content, be sure to like, to share, to rate, to review. If you are watching us on YouTube, do us a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Get the bell notification for when we drop that fire content. Also, hello to the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Glad you have found us here. And as we always say, please stay here. Let your friends know about us here on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Also, hello to all our friends who have found us on Roku. Once again, glad you have found us here. And tell your friends a lot of ways to catch us and catch this wonderful Overtime Podcast. All right, Andre, we are closing out the week on this Thursday on YouTube, Friday on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Holiday weekend. Saints start OTAs next week. It should get interesting. Pace picks up a little bit. I'll be out there. So it should be a fun week next week. As for the time being, a familiar topic has popped back up.
Familiar for sure.
We teased it in Wednesday's pod. We're going to get to that today. Of course, we're talking about the status of Alvin Kamara. Yes, we have to go there again. But first things first, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. You know, it's a rainy day outside, but ironically up in the Baton Rouge area, it's nothing but sunshine and rainbows. I know we're a Saints podcast, but we're also Louisiana-based. And, man, late last night, Coach O returning to LSU. I've seen a lot of great tag teams in my life, but a tag team between Lane Kiffin and Ed Orgeron at LSU, man, what a time to be alive.
Just think of the 2026-2027 academic school year. That campus between football with Kiffin and Orgeron and all those guys, and men's basketball with Will Wade and, you know, pulling players out of the NBA to come on back to
27-year-old international roster.
I mean, he's got to speak a few different languages this year. Will Wade on the basketball court. But, man, that campus is going to be full of energy. And let's be honest, outside Louisiana, probably going to be hated a lot. Probably got that villain energy.
I'll tell you what, they're embracing being a villain for sure.
They're embracing it unlike anybody I've ever seen. And we'll just see how it goes. So, we're going to be front row and center watching the whole thing.
Who saw an LSU coaching world where Kim Mulkey might be the most low-key coach of them all? I mean, you got Lane Kiffin and Coach O over at football, Will Wade bringing in grown men from overseas to play for him, getting so much hate. Jay Johnson coming off a bad season talking about, I don't know why I built the roster this way.
Yep.
And Kim Mulkey just over there minding her business.
Never a dull day. So we'll see what happens. All right, as for the matter at hand, Andre, we got to go here. Look, Mickey Loomis, they're going to continue to ask about this until there's a definitive answer. And until they choose to give us a definitive answer, the questions are going to keep coming. And you're going to get answers like this. This is Mickey Loomis on the status of Alvin Kamara. Take a listen.
Yeah, you know, we're just trying to see how he's going to fit in our roster. And obviously there's a resource management element to it. And, you know, we'll get to that over the next week or two.
Does he currently have a decision to make on like a revamped contract or something?
No, not currently, no.
So do you, I mean, with OTAs starting next week, is that a deadline to try and figure out who's on the roster? And who's not?
I mean, that creates a little bit of a deadline, yes. But it's not hard and fast.
And you mentioned resource management. Is that about the contract?
Yeah, sure, certainly, yeah. But, you know, how we manage our cap and, you know, we'll get to that.
All right, Andre, should we get into it?
I guess.
All right, let's get into it. We sound like a broken record. I really don't want to have to revisit this topic again, but we have to. We have to with every single time it gets brought up and every single time you get an answer, non-answer, we got to go here. So let's get to it. We talked about it on Wednesday's pod. With Cam Jordan, the ball is squarely in his court.
Yep.
Saints have made their position clear. With Alvin Kamara, it's the exact opposite. The ball is firmly in the Saints' court. And if I could switch ball court to ball field analogies here, I still have no idea what they plan to do with the ball when it actually counts, because in their practice reps with the football, it feels like they've been fumbling. over and over
that.
and over. Again, I have said this multiple times. I love the Saints offseason. I didn't expect to be this excited about this team. I thought it'd be a little more incremental, but I love what the Saints have done. Every single move has made sense, and every single reason behind the move has made sense. Every single one of them, almost, with the exception of this. And I just, for the life of me, cannot understand this approach. I am sure they have their reasons for handling it the way they're handling it, and I guess we will find out in due time. But I just don't see the logic at this point. Why does it have to be this weird? Why does it have to feel this uncomfortable? Why are we sitting here almost Memorial Day and there's like this slow drip coming out of the faucet? You know, like at night you'll hear it, you don't quite turn it all the way up. Doop, doop, doop. It's still there when it comes to Alvin Kamara. Once again, we'll say it again. We sound like a broken record. There are legitimate football reasons to move on from a guy like AK. Gonna turn 31 years old, plays a high contact position, has clearly lost a step, not as explosive, not a lead guy anymore. And this is the other thing I've learned over the last couple of weeks, because we've done a few pods on this, and we've done a few topics like this. If you really get a gauge on the response, at least the responses I get directly, this might have changed my thinking a little bit. As far as from the fan base, I'm not even sure there would even be a huge backlash if they were to move on from Alvin Kamara. So if there was some kind of fear of his status and this, fan favorite, beloved, yeah, those are all true. But also, I think, don't underestimate the intelligence of the Saints fan base. They understand the situation here. And even if there was a backlash from a small group or a loud but small group of Saints fans, it will be over within plenty of time before the season starts. Once Achane gets going, it would all be forgotten. There are also legitimate reasons to keep him.
Yep.
He still catches the ball out of the backfield. If he's a number 2 instead of a number 1, he's not carrying the load as much and his carries are diminished, so he's being a little more efficient as opposed to a little more, a high volume. Maybe he can be more effective. They've already adjusted the contract to get the cap space, so I don't know exactly what other amount of cap relief you're trying to get from him. So the work has already been done in that regard. And not only that, you were able to do it in a way where it doesn't risk you in future years. So that's another reason to say, let's just roll with it one more year. Column A, legitimate reason to move on. Column B, legitimate reasons to keep him. We remain in column C, this limbo, this situation where, what are we doing? What is this? Loomis said or alluded to the fact that they will have conversations. They haven't necessarily had a lot of conversations yet. So I will go back to the original point. We said the last time we had this topic, all I can think of to be at this stage and still unclear with, like he said, where he fits in the roster, like he said, resource management, it's simply this. They have to have a conversation with him about A, it's going to be a significantly diminished role, and B, we would like to pay you a contract based off that diminished role. AKA, we need you to take a pay cut because you're not going to be running the ball as much. And maybe that conversation hasn't been had yet. Why? I have no idea. Why you drag it out? I have no idea. We all understand Alvin does his thing, but I'm quite sure if Mickey Loomis wanted to pick up the phone and call him, Alvin would answer the phone. So that's all I can really think of. Eventually, this conversation will be had. Eventually, those two things I've discussed, either A, the diminished role, or B, the pay cut, or C, both, all the above, will get discussed. And eventually you will get the response from Alvin that you either a yes or a no. If it's not that, then I have no idea what it is. But let me just say this to close it out. Here is the bottom line. OTAs start next week, and you heard Mickey allude to in the press conference. I'm not sure if he said it exactly in that bite, but with OTA starting, it's not a hard deadline, but you're getting closer to the decision needs to be made. There's a softer deadline. You got to get this resolved, all right? It's fine to play around in March. It's fine to play around in April. There's still plenty of time before you get to football. But once you get to OTAs, you're really crossing that threshold. It's not dire, but it gets more urgent. It's not dire, but it gets more, hey, we're getting organized. We're figuring things out. We're starting our path now. Do we have 41 or do we not? And the longer you let this linger into OTAs, the questions will keep coming. And the questions, as long as it goes unknown, will probably get a little more aggressive with each and every press conference that you get. And with each and every press conference that they have, Mickey Loomis says what he says, which is, try to be as down the middle as possible. Then you point the camera to Kellen Moore. Still looks as uncomfortable as anyone I've ever seen answering a question when it comes to the future of Alvin Kamara. Get this done. Get this done. This has gone on long enough, and this is not on the player. This is on the Saints. You've got to make a decision here when it comes to Alvin Kamara. It should not be this difficult. Is he back? Is he not? Is he taking the pay cut? Is he keeping the pay as it is? Is it a diminished role? Is it going to be a different type of role? Get all the questions out, get all the answers that you need, and move on. This has gone on long enough. What about you?
I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing? I mean, for us to still be talking about Alvin Kamara for the 7th time, I'm not a betting man. But I would wager, I think this is fair, that Mickey Loomis has Alvin Kamara's phone number. What do you mean, we still need to talk to Alvin? The season ended in early January. Maybe you didn't want to hit him up early January. Okay, well, you had all of January, then you had February. Super Bowl, vacations, maybe you don't want to him up in February. You got March when the free agency and the league calendar started. You had all of April. We're halfway through May, and we're approaching OTAs. I mean, we're at a point now where it's like, what do you mean you haven't touched base with Alvin Kamara about something so important? Because Alvin, from what he said, seems to believe that he is very much a part of this team and is excited to take part in all team activities. But then you answer the Saints, it's like they're going out of their way to be intentionally coy. Because if you ask the Saints about anybody else, you ask Loomis, you ask Kellen Moore, we're excited to have Travis Etienne. We want to see what Caden Ellis, can do in this defense. We want to see what so-and-so, so-and-so. They'll give you a straight answer. Even about guys who are not on the team. Alvin Kamara's on the team.
Right.
You ask him about Cam Jordan. We've offered Cam a contract. Cam ain't even on the team right now. You ask him about Taysom Hill. No, we haven't offered Taysom Hill a contract. Once again, he is not on the team. Alvin Kamara, who is actively on the team with a contract that you recently redid a couple months ago, for some reason is the only player on the entire roster that you cannot get a straight answer from the Saints about it. It just doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, this isn't game week. This isn't like, we don't want to tip our hand and revisit. It's not like you're trying to hide your game plan from the Carolina Panthers because you play them next week. No, this is off season. We're just trying to figure out what's going on between you and one of the higher profile players on your team. And like you said, if what the Saints want to do and what Tyrann Mathieu, former teammate, alluded to Mickey Loomis not having the guts to do is to move on from Alvin Kamara, I don't think it would be a huge backlash, like you said.
I really don't. I really don't.
I think we would.
Be a small one, but I don't think nearly as big as you would think.
Yeah, I think they would honor AK. They would appreciate his legacy, what he did here. But, I mean, ultimately, there hasn't been a big backlash around Cam Jordan.
No.
Cam Jordan's probably a Mount Rushmore Saint in this team history. There's been a backlash around the fact that they're not, doing everything they can to bring Cam back. There's not a huge backlash around them not having offered Taysom Hill, the most unique player in franchise history, a contract. So when you look at Alvin Kamara, probably the greatest running back in Saints history, if considering the circumstances, the team decided to move on from AK, sure. But once again, as of now, as far as we know and as far as AK knows from what he told everybody on that podcast, he's on the team. And when you look at the team, when you look at the roster, there is an area and there is a role where Alvin Kamara can still contribute to winning, even having taken a step back, even getting less touches than he's gotten over the last few years. I think that in a specific role, he can still contribute to the betterment of this football team. So I don't understand what all the confusion is that is spreading from the Saints front office every time the name Alvin Kamara comes up.
And here's the other thing. You said something interesting at the end there about you can still contribute. Let's just say, you know, he falls off the proverbial cliff like it happens with some running backs where they just all of a sudden are just not the player anymore. And all of a sudden he's your third best running back. Okay. All right. Well, that's what happens in the NFL. An older guy gets older, a younger guy pushes him, and all of a sudden that younger guy is a little bit better, and you just want to give that guy a little more reps, and you want to see what that guy can do with more opportunity, and the old guy takes a back seat. Okay. Where's the problem there? Okay, that happens in NFL regardless if a guy signed for $100 million or $100,000. That happens in the NFL. That's the natural progression of any player of any position in professional sports, probably regardless of sports. So, again, if it sounds like we're just like we remain confused, it's because we are. If we sound like we don't know which way this is going to turn, it's because we don't. I get asked a lot, what's going to happen with Alvin? What's going to happen with Alvin? I have no idea because of the approach that they seem to be taking with him. And what makes this situation so different than the other guys is he is under contract. And what's odd is, you know, talk about resource management. I believe we got to ask him to take a pay cut based off of a diminished role. But you've already did the adjustment to his contract. Clearly, you didn't have to have any conversation with him to do that contract adjustment, or you would have had it already, and you would have been able to say, hey, you know, kill two birds with one stone right there. But we remain unsure. But I will say this, there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, and you heard it from Mickey. We didn't play Kellen, but Kellen said it, and after he was, of course, kind of gave the answer that he gives, where you can kind of see the long face that he closes out with when he answers the question. But he said, it's coming soon. They kind of slipped it in at the end. They understand now, hopefully, that this has to get solved soon. Because, you know, if I'm Kellen Moore, and you can see his body visibly get more uncomfortable once he feels the question coming, I don't want to answer this question anymore. And it's not like we're asking you to solve some chemical equation every single time. It's, do you want the guy, do you not? Make a decision. If you ask him to take a pay cut, or if they ask him to take a pay cut, what's your gut feeling? Would Alvin take a pay cut?
I think he would.
I actually think he would too.
Alvin Kamara has said he wants to be a Saint and only wants to be a Saint. He doesn't have any interest in playing with another team. So, I mean, if you ask Alvin to take a pay cut, depending on, as long as you're not trying to give him the minimum, I think that he would be receptive to that.
Or, yeah, I mean, yeah, and what they typically do in a pay cut situation, it's not just here, give me your money. It's, we're going to knock your salary down. Mm-hmm. We're going to give you a path to make some of that back up, like Cam Jordan last year.
Yep.
And then who knows what happens? This is the NFL. Injuries happen, especially at the running back position. No one understands this more than Alvin. All of a sudden, it could be week 16. He's the running back available. He's getting the majority of the touches. And who knows? Maybe all the incentives are cleared and he makes more money. This conversation has to happen because I'm tired of talking about this. Exactly. We've had way too many conversations about the conversation that hadn't seemed to happen yet, or at least it doesn't feel like it's had to happen yet. So please, it's been a great offseason. Get this done. I really don't care what happens either way. I mean, I just wanted to be, because like I said before, if they say, look, we wanted to move on, young guys, fine. If they say we still see a future for him and we still think he can be, you know, an asset, great. But let's just get there. Let's just all be on the same page, because this ambiguity, this limbo, this, like I call it, the slow drip, it needs to end.
Yeah, I'm just ready for the conversation to end. I want the next time we talk about Alvin Kamara to be,
how'd he look?
He showed up at camp. You know, he looked good, yada, yada, yada. I don't want to keep talking about will they, won't they, will he, won't he. And for those who think we're reading too deep into this, listen to how they talk about him compared to how they talk about anybody else. Notice that the questions keep getting asked. We're not asking questions about Chase Young every press conference. We're not asking about Pete Werner, Caden Ellis. We're not asking about Brian Brzee because we know where they stand. Mm-hmm. We don't know where Alvin stands because the way the Saints answer the questions whenever AK comes up. And listen to how they answer questions about Tyler Shuck, Travis Etienne, Chris Olave. We don't know what's going on with Chris Olave and his contract, but it's not coming up every other week because they were definitive in, we love what Chris has done, and we will tackle that when the time comes. but they refuse to be definitive about this Alvin Kamara topic, which is why it keeps going on, which is why for the, 6th, 7th time, we are talking to you guys about it.
Hopefully the next time we bring this up, we'll have a definitive answer. I hope so, because look, what's going to end up happening is next week, whenever they talk, either Wednesday or Thursday, I think it's Thursday of next week, if no news is broken between now and then, or if he's not there and it's still open-ended, and you go another week into that, oh my goodness. It's just going to keep going and going. I hope the next time we have this conversation, we know he either is a Saint or is not a Saint in 2026. What else do we have today?
Well, there was a strange report out of, I believe it was Polymarket, that all of a sudden the Saints had skyrocketed to the favorite to be Cowboys receiver George Pickens' next team. Now, I looked at a lot of different options at receiver for the Saints. One that I didn't even think to look at is George Pickens, who I believe just got franchise tagged.
Yeah, they said they were going to use the franchise.
By Dallas. The possibility of George Pickens wearing black and gold. How do you feel about that?
First off, I saw it as a trending topic on X. I was like, where did this come from? And then I saw the genesis of the report was, the markets, which is a very popular thing within the last, 1 or 2 years. I mean, those like the Kalshi markets, the poly markets like that, that's become a big part of just the entire news gathering process. You take these things into consideration. But you talk about left field. I mean, this team is trying to get an extension done with Chris Olave. This team just drafted not 1, not 2, but 3 wide receivers. This team traded for Devon Vele last year. This team is well stocked. Now, that's not saying I don't think George Pickens couldn't come in and be a really good player, because I think he can. I know he's had some issues at times as far as locker room, but for all accounts, he's been on decent behavior when he's been in, Dallas right now. Yeah. And if he's signing a franchise tag, it's not so easy to just trade for a guy like that. You got to trade with almost the assumption that you're doing a sign and trade where you're trading for him, but also signing him to a long-term contract. And they're doing it right now, or in the midst of doing it right now with Chris Olave, unless it was some crazy player-for-player trade, which I'm not even sure is allowed with a franchise tag. It was a fun report to look at. Made us think. Decent secondary topic for this podcast. But you talk about left field, I don't see it. What about you?
I'll say I don't see George Pickens winding up in New Orleans. But if he does, there's only one possibility that makes sense to me. And it's not George Pickens and Chris Olave in the same receiver room. It's trading George Pickens for Chris Olave.
Is that allowed?
I mean,
with the franchise tag, can you do player for player?
You should be able to. I mean, They're both technically have 1 year left on their deal, so I believe you can trade a player on the franchise tag. So if you trade one for the other, that's essentially the Saints and the Cowboys saying, from the Saints' perspective, we like Chris Olave, but if we're going to pay somebody, because like I said, the longer you take to pay Chris Olave, the higher that price keeps going. If we're going to give a young receiver 35, 36, 37, 38 million, I don't want to give that to Chris Olave, who you could still argue is a wide receiver too. But that George Pickens over there, that's a wide receiver 1. There's no debate about it. If you want to go Pickens versus Olave, despite Pickens and he can be a little crazy sometimes, but he's available. He's actually never been suspended. Now, he's paid a few fines, but he's never been suspended. He's in the same amount of time as Olave. He's played more games. He's gotten more touchdowns. He has more yards. He's had more yards than Olave in 3 of the 4 seasons that they've played. 3 of the last 4, actually. Olave's rookie year.
Are they the same draft class?
Yeah, same draft class. So Olave's rookie year is the only year that he beat him out. He is a better receiver than Chris Olave. So the only way that this makes sense to me is the Saints saying, if we're going to pay a young receiver that much money, I'd rather pay George Pickens than Chris Olave. And Dallas saying, we are already paying a receiver in CeeDee Lamb top-tier money. Maybe instead of trying to overpay another wide receiver 1, we bring in a Chris Olave who can really settle in and be that wide receiver 2 to our wide receiver 1 in CeeDee Lamb. So again, this is something that I don't think is very likely, despite the prediction market seeming to think so. I don't think this move happens. I don't think Pickens winds up in New Orleans. But the only way that I can spin the wheel and make it make sense in my mind is if you trade Pickens for Olave and then you wind up paying Pickens because you just say, hey, receiver for receiver, we think this guy's better.
I haven't heard anything about this, and I don't know how Polymarket tracks things. Obviously, it's a gambling site, so money comes in on certain things, and you can bet on anything nowadays. But to me, the path I could see, because I could see a world. I hope this doesn't happen. It doesn't sound like it's going to happen. I think they want to get a deal done. But I could see a world where negotiations get cut off with, if they can't agree to an extension before the season starts, they decide to put it on hold and wait till next year. Like, I can see a world where the Saints aren't able to get to an extension with Chris Olave. It's unlikely, but it can happen if it gets too pricey, whatever the case may be. But I think the alternative to that wouldn't be, well, let's go trade for a guy and sign another guy to a big contract that it's going to be in the same ballpark as the one we couldn't agree to, Chris Olave. Plus, like I said, I think the wide receiver market is the first one to bust in terms of the prices are so high. A team's just going to be like, I can't afford that. I can go get Jordan Tyson in the draft or all those wide receivers we talked about in the draft this year, and we're just going to play it that way. But we'll see. I don't know where they got this from. I don't see this happening. And for the record, I don't want to mislead people with what I just said with the Chris Olave thing. I do believe they're going to reach an extension. I do believe it's going to be between $30 and $32 million a season. And for the most part, from what I've been able to gather, it's been pretty amicable, pretty friendly discussions. You just hope it comes, hopefully, before the season starts.
I don't think George Pickens will wind up a Saint. I think the Saints and Chris Olave will wind up working something else. I do think it's criminal that they've waited this long to sign Chris Olave to that deal as the price keeps going up. I think that's bad business, me personally, but it's what they're doing. Hopefully, that's another topic we can put to bed before the start of the season.
All right. We got to get out of here. Holiday weekend. I'm taking a couple of days off. So, everyone, enjoy your holiday. For Andre Johnson Jr., I'm Sean Fazende. We'll catch you guys next time on Overtime.